and the economy afloat. The efforts included increased unemployment benefits, loans to small businesses, and of course, cash directly to people's bank accounts. But how do American efforts stack up versus other countries? Are other governments giving their citizens more support?
They saw median incomes rise in April and May in response to the legislation as folks got that stimulus payment and got the increased unemployment insurance benefits into their savings. And of course, savings went up. So we actually saw an increase in income, which is sort of counterintuitive when you think about where the direction it should be going.
$700 in the fourth stimulus checks. Or here, everybody, there is some good news about the fourth stimulus payments that I want you to know. New payments have been approved and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people can expect to receive more money this year. Now, the deadline has passed for people in South Carolina to file state individual income tax returns for the year. And that means rebates totaling up to $700 are actually beginning to go out and sent throughout the end of the year. The South Carolina Department of Revenue Director has actually told reporters that we're on schedule to issue rebates by the end of the year. You must have filed your 2021 individual income tax return by October to be eligible for this money. It's free money too. To qualify for the rebate, applicants had to file their tax return by the deadline and have a tax liability for the rest of the year. So the maximum payment you can receive is actually pretty big. It's $700. And according to the state, when you're referring to this year's rebate, you're considered as having tax liability if you owe state individual income tax for the year 2021. The amount of your tax liability is determined by the amount of individual income that you owe, minus any credits. And everybody, the state lawmakers have approved the distribution of the tax rebates during a session in June, including it in a $13 billion budget bill. The rebates are projected to cost roughly $1 billion. And Joe Biden even said that new record on jobs with 10.3 million gained during his tenure is very good for the elections. Now, economic anxieties have compounded as the Fed has repeatedly hiked its benchmark interest rates again, everybody. That's due to lower inflation, everybody, and to possibly raise unemployment. However, mortgage costs have just soared upwards. Biden is asking voters again to look beyond this and to look beyond current financial plan and say that what matters is the job gains that he believes his policies are creating is good. Now, the government actually reported this past Friday that employers added 260,000 jobs in October as the unemployment rate just bumped up again to 3.7. Roughly 740,000 manufacturing jobs have been added since the start of Biden's presidency, a figure that the president says will keep rising because of his funding for infrastructure projects and the production of computer chips and a switch to clean energy sources. Biden said in a speech that America is reasserting itself as a simple country. We know that folks are still struggling and it's a number one priority to help them out. But do you think that President Biden is actually doing what he said, actually doing what he promised us? Tell me what you think in the comments. I'm not sure if he is, but let me know what you think. For instance, as Biden tries to fend off fears that inflation is causing the country to slide into recession, his chief evidence of the economy's resilience is the continued job growth. So, it's the Republican majority in Congress that can make inflation worse by speaking to and seeking to undo his programs and treating payments on the federal debt as a bargaining chip instead of an obligation to honor. The White House press secretary told reporters, as we see, the country is not going into recession. Our analysis suggests that inflation is erased, and the political boost that Democrats have gotten is good for the 3/4 of the year. Republican candidates have even specifically said Biden's $1 trillion stimulus package is the one to blame. But what do you think, everybody? I believe the stimulus package was actually useful, and many people benefited from this money in ways they couldn't have done before. So, hopefully President Biden sends out more stimulus right now.
We also met with Indo-Pacific allies, including a trilateral meeting with Japan and the Republic of Korea, and with President Xi in Bali, as well as leaders of the G20 and the countries with many of the largest economies in the world. It was clear to me, and I think to most people in those meetings, that the United States is as well or better positioned than any nation in the world to lead the world on the economy in the years ahead. And there's a strong sense from all the leaders of the world of the strength of the American economy, and we've seen the willingness to want to work together and also here at home. We had an extraordinary 2 years of progress from the American Rescue Plan, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, Inflation Reduction Act, and the CHIPS and Science Act. But what I'm most excited about is that people are starting to see the impact of these legislative achievements in their own lives. We're just getting started. We passed them this year, but now they're really going to kick into effect. It's going to accelerate in the months ahead. And the implementation of these legislative achievements is going to be one of the key parts of the success, I believe, for the economy. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring us together today. You know, I've called together a group of labor leaders and business leaders to discuss progress in building the economy from the bottom up and the middle out. And they've been partners in creating the jobs of the future and in building a world-class workplace ready to compete to fill those jobs. And our approach, I believe, is working. The economy grew at 2.6% last quarter, while inflation started to slow and unemployment started to...
Folks, what are your thoughts on President Biden and the fourth stimulus check? Is President Biden going to do all that it takes to help out the American people with this, or do you believe that he's holding it back? Tell me what you think in the comments down below. Personally, everybody, I believe that President Biden can definitely do more for the American people and send out stimulus checks sooner than later. It needs to be done. More relief cash is coming. The deadline is quickly approaching for millions of Americans to take action and claim a new direct payment. In this video, I will be sharing with you the exact dates and details of this new round of stimulus checks. Now, some homeowners could also get financial help this month, and this could come from the Homeowner Assistance Fund. The American Rescue Plan set aside almost $10 billion for homeowner relief, and more than 40 states have now set up homeowner assistance programs to facilitate the distribution of funds. The funds will be distributed to the states by the Treasury Department, and money from this program could be used to help with mortgage payments, homeowner insurance costs, and other specified purposes. Between these state programs and homeowner assistance funds, millions could soon be entitled to money from the government to help them cope with the ongoing financial consequences of the crisis. Denver is anticipating its second half of stimulus funding to come in July, and according to city officials, Denver will receive $300 million in relief funds through the American Rescue Plan. The governor, along with leadership from the House and Senate, announced that people in Colorado will receive a $400 stimulus check this year as well. The stimulus is available to full-time Colorado residents who have filed their 2021 tax returns by May 31st. Approximately 3.1 million people in Colorado are eligible for the rebate. The legislation is also designed to help Coloradans combat the rising cost of everyday necessities. It will provide $400 for a single filer and $800 to a joint filer. The state's strong economic rebound, which includes more than 100% of recovery rate of jobs and a 3.7% unemployment rate, has led to a record state surplus. And now, Janet Yellen recently stated that the recession that many Americans fear that is coming is not at all imminent. Talks of a recession has accelerated this year as inflation remains high and the Federal Reserve takes aggressive steps to counter it. This week, the Fed announced a 75 basis points interest rate hike, its largest since 1994. The Fed Chair Jerome Powell indicated that the Federal Open Market Committee's intent to continue its aggressive path of monetary policy tightening in order to rein in inflation. At the same time, many expect